The village of Sarana, nestled in the rural hinterlands, was a place where time seemed to stand still. Bound by traditions, every family knew every secret, except those they didn't dare speak of. At the heart of the village was Mahadev Singh, a 62-year-old elder, revered for his wisdom and his supposed piety. Mahadev had served as the head of the Panchayat for over 3 decades. With his stern face and flowing white beard, he exuded an aura of unquestionable authority, but hidden behind this facade was a predator who preyed on the powerless. At 16, Sita Kumari was like many other girls in Sarana, quiet, obedient, and dreaming of a life that didn't involve working in the fields. She lived with her widowed mother, Radha, in a modest mud house on the edge of the village. The family barely scraped by, relying on small wages Radha earned from washing clothes and occasional help from neighbors. One monsoon evening, after a Panchayat meeting, Mahadev visited Radha under the pretense of offering financial aid. Sita had been alone in the house, while her mother was out delivering laundry. Mahadev's intentions that night weren't charitable. He overpowered the young girl, silencing her screams with threats of ruination for her and her family. Sita didn't speak a word of the assault. She knew what would happen if she did. In Sarana, the reputation of an elder like Mahadev was impenetrable, and a girl accusing him of such a crime was as good as dead socially, if not physically. But Mahadev didn't stop there. Over the weeks that followed, he manipulated Radha, convincing her that Sita's purity was in question and that marriage was her only option. And so, Sita was married to Mahadev Singh, a man 46 years her senior. The village murmured in shock, but accepted it under the guise of Mahadev's kindness in saving a widow's family from disgrace. For 4 years, Sita endured the indignity of being a wife to the man who had stolen her innocence. To the villagers, she became Mahadev Ki Choti Patni, Mahadev's young wife, her individuality swallowed whole by his shadow. But no one noticed the quiet resolve growing in Sita, or the way she watched and waited. Sita adjusted to her new reality, but not by choice. Every morning, she woke up before dawn, swept the floors of Mahadev's sprawling ancestral home, and prepared his meals. To the outside world, she was dutiful, obedient to her elder husband. Inside, she seethed with silent rage. Every glance at Mahadev reminded her of the life he had stolen. Mahadev had his routines, predictable as the sunrise. He spent mornings resolving petty disputes in the village, afternoons napping under the banyan tree, and evenings surrounded by a rotating cast of sycophants. These routines provided Sita moments of reprieve, allowing her to think, to plan, to hope. One afternoon, while tidying Mahadev's study, Sita stumbled upon a stack of old documents. At first glance, they seemed like land records and Panchayat notes, but one file caught her eye, a record of money transfers to various accounts. The sums were substantial. Mahadev was siphoning off funds meant for village development. Sita tucked the papers back where she found them, her mind whirring with possibilities. She now had leverage, proof that could tarnish Mahadev's image. Her first act of rebellion came in whispers. She started talking to women in the village, cautiously at first, planting seeds of doubt about Mahadev's supposed virtue. She hinted at his corruption and his cruelty toward her, testing how far the gossip might travel. To her surprise, several women nodded in agreement. Mahadev wasn't as untouchable as he thought. As the months passed, Sita forged secret alliances. One was with Lakshmi, a spirited widow who had long harbored resentment toward Mahadev for denying her rightful share of her husband's land. Another was with Anil, a young teacher frustrated by the lack of resources in the village school, resources Mahadev had likely embezzled. Quietly, Sita began piecing together a network of discontent. Mahadev remained oblivious to the storm brewing under his roof. His arrogance blinded him to the signs, the stolen glances between Sita and her allies during village gatherings, the fleeting smiles that betrayed her growing confidence. Sita played the role of the submissive wife to perfection, masking the defiance simmering beneath. The turning point came on an unseasonably cool evening. Mahadev, slightly drunk from the toddy he consumed during a late-night Panchayat meeting, made a careless remark in front of Sita and a few villagers. "These women, they are like cattle," he sneered. "They need a strong hand to guide them, or they'll stray and ruin the household." The comment, though typical of Mahadev, stung Sita deeply. She realized then that Mahadev didn't just see her as his wife. He saw her as his property, no different from the land he hoarded or the power he wielded. That night, she made a decision. Mahadev Singh would pay for what he had done. In the months that followed, Sita's plans began to take shape. She knew she couldn't confront Mahadev outright. The weight of his power in the village could crush her efforts before they began. Instead, she decided to unravel his image, piece by piece, until the mighty elder was nothing more than a shadow of the man the villagers believed him to be. The first blow came quietly. Using the incriminating financial records she had found in Mahadev's study, Sita shared copies with Anil, the schoolteacher. Anil, in turn, began anonymously leaking the information to influential villagers, those who had previously supported Mahadev in the panchayat. Whispers of embezzlement spread like wildfire. Lakshmi, the widow with a long-standing grudge, played her part as well. At the local temple one morning, she loudly questioned why the funds allocated for repairing the village well had vanished. Other villagers chimed in, emboldened by her defiance. Mahadev's name wasn't mentioned directly, but everyone knew who held the purse strings. As cracks began to appear in Mahadev's pristine reputation, Sita escalated her efforts. During one of Mahadev's panchayat meetings, she made a bold move. She entered the gathering, a space traditionally reserved for men, and interrupted a discussion about a land dispute. "Why should anyone trust a man who can't account for the village's funds?" she asked, her voice trembling but resolute. The men in the room froze. Mahadev, taken off guard, dismissed her as hysterical and ordered her to leave, but the damage was done. Her words lingered in the air, planting doubt in even his staunchest supporters. That night, Mahadev lashed out. His temper flared as he accused Sita of disrespecting him in front of the village elders. His rage turned physical, leaving Sita bruised and shaken. But the attack only strengthened her resolve. She realized Mahadev's violent reaction was not just anger, it was fear. The man who had terrorized her for years was finally feeling vulnerable. The second blow to Mahadev's image came from an unexpected source. Anil, emboldened by the growing discontent, staged a small protest outside the panchayat office, demanding accountability for the missing funds. The protest, though modest, attracted attention from a local journalist who published a damning article in the regional newspaper. Mahadev's name was mentioned explicitly, tarnishing his reputation beyond the village. For the first time, Mahadev seemed shaken. He withdrew from public life, spending more time at home, his paranoia growing. He began questioning everyone around him, but never suspected Sita. To him, she was still the docile young girl he had manipulated into marriage, unbeknownst to Mahadev. Sita had saved her most devastating move for last. The final act of Sita's plan required precision and immense courage. She knew that bringing Mahadev to his knees wasn't just about exposing his corruption. It was about unveiling his darkest secret and breaking the silence that had protected him for so long. The fear she once harbored had been replaced by a fiery determination. Sita's opportunity came during the annual village festival, an event where the entire community gathered to celebrate. This was Mahadev's stage, a chance for him to reinforce his dwindling influence. Despite the recent scandals, he attended, his posture confident, his turban freshly starched, and his voice booming with authority. But beneath the bravado was a man desperate to hold on to the reins of power. The village square was alive with the hum of conversation, the clinking of bangles, and the scent of incense. Sita stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching the bundle of papers she had prepared for weeks. Every piece of evidence she carried, the financial records, affidavits from other victims, and her own written testimony, was a weapon against Mahadev's tyranny. As the festival reached its peak, with prayers offered at the temple and elders addressing the crowd, Sita stepped forward. Her heartbeat quickened as she approached the center of the courtyard. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. The crowd began to notice her presence, and the chatter quieted. "I have something to say," Sita began, her voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with each word. "For years, I have been silent, but tonight, I refuse to stay silent any longer." Mahadev, seated among the elders in a place of honor, glared at her. "Sita, enough of this nonsense. Return to your place," he commanded, his voice sharp and dismissive. But this time, his authority didn't work. Sita locked eyes with him, unflinching. "I will not," she replied, her voice firm. "You can no longer silence me." The crowd murmured, a mixture of curiosity and unease spreading through them. Sita held up the bundle of papers, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. "This man you all respect, this man who claims to be your protector, is nothing more than a fraud and a predator. He assaulted me when I was just a girl. He forced me into marriage and robbed me of my freedom, and I am not the only one." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some villagers looked shocked, others skeptical, but Sita pressed on, detailing the years of abuse and manipulation she had endured. Her voice carried across the square, unwavering as she described how Mahadev had used his position of power to exploit and silence those who could not fight back. She unfolded the financial records, pointing to specific transactions where Mahadev had embezzled funds meant for the village. Then, she presented medical reports documenting injuries she had hidden, affidavits from women who had confided in her, and even notes from a few of Mahadev's former allies who had grown disillusioned with his rule. Mahadev's face contorted with fury. He rose from his seat, shouting, "Lies, all lies. This girl has been poisoned against me." He turned to the crowd, trying to regain control. "You all know me. I have served this village my entire life. She is trying to ruin me." But the villagers were no longer his to command. Lakshmi, the widow, stepped forward, her voice shaking but resolute. "And what about my husband's land, Mahadev? You stole it from me after his death and called it a service to the community. Where is your honor in that?" One by one, other women came forward, emboldened by Sita's courage. A young girl spoke of Mahadev's inappropriate advances. Another woman recounted how Mahadev had dismissed her plea for help when her husband fell ill, choosing instead to divert the village's medical funds for his own use. The air grew thick with tension. Mahadev, realizing his grip was slipping, attempted to storm out, but the villagers blocked his path. His once loyal supporters turned on him, demanding answers. The elders, hesitant and afraid of Mahadev's wrath, finally yielded to the tide of voices and ordered him to stay and face the accusations. The most damning evidence came when Sita presented her own testimony, a journal she had secretly kept for years, documenting every instance of abuse, manipulation, and betrayal. Her words painted a vivid picture of the pain Mahadev had inflicted, not just on her, but on countless others. The villagers listened in silence, their shock turning to anger. As the crowd grew restless, a local constable stepped forward, having been summoned earlier by Anil, the schoolteacher. The constable announced that the district police had been informed and that Mahadev would be taken into custody for further investigation. The villagers cheered, a cathartic release of years of pent-up frustration and fear. Mahadev's protests fell on deaf ears as the constable led him away. His towering figure, once a symbol of authority, now seemed small and frail. Sita watched as he disappeared into the night, her heart heavy but relieved. The man who had stolen so much from her was finally facing justice.